The story goes, if you ever visited Walter Becker's Maui studio and you wanted to use the bathroom, you were directed outside to an outhouse where there, on one of the walls, hung Walter's gold record for Asia. The disc over time had become, let's say, a bit weather-beaten, and it kind of summed up just how Mr. Becker felt about being a rock star and his irreverent humour. I first came across Walter and the music of Steely Dan when the Melody Maker, a UK music paper, placed Pretzel Logic as their album of the year. By that time, the Dan consisted of just Walter and his trusty sidekick Donald Fagin, the other band members having left, partly because of Walter and Don's lack of interest in touring and their ever-increasing reliance on a dazzling array of the best session musicians around. Don and Walter were jazz heads. They loved all the intricacies and technical virtuosity of that genre, but they somehow wanted to combine all that with their love of blues, rhythm and blues, soul and pop music. In their laboratory, the studio, they were able to do that, meticulously crafting every song and every minute detail of that song. And when they couldn't produce those sounds themselves, they pulled in the best musicians available, coaxing out of those musicians some extraordinary performances. Walter Becker. The musicians we hire are prepared to go way beyond the strictures of most pop or commercial work. So when the right context comes along, they get a chance to do what they rarely get to do. Donald Fagin. Soloists are challenged by the complexity of the chords. When we write, the arrangements are set up to make the soloist stand out. There'll be a modulation or something to help him sound good. We build things into the arrangements the way a good big band arrangement does. Dean Parks. Walter and Don would strive constantly for perfection, and they got there. And once they'd achieved that plateau, things started to loosen out a bit, and everyone became a lot looser and a lot freer. But the icing on the cake was that Steely Dan managed to put all this musical sophistication into killer pop songs. They were craftsmen, they were songsmiths who could come up with a killer hook, a soaring melody and harmonies to die for. With all their jazz chords, their strange time signatures and intricate arrangements, they made sure never to veer into the territory of jazz rock fusion. Walter Becker. I'm not interested in a jazz rock fusion. That kind of marriage has only come up with ponderous results. We play rock and roll, but we swing when we play. We want that ongoing flow, that lightness, that forward rush of jazz. Steely Dan's lyrics contain their wry, sardonic observations about life, the human condition, drug dealers, faded hipsters, the cast of characters that walk through the strange world of Steely Dan was huge. They even managed to come up with a song, a killer song about a milkshake, and cram Homer's The Odyssey into 5 minutes 34 seconds of sheer brilliance. Their lyrics could go from biting sarcasm, they got the shapely bodies, they got the Steely Dan t-shirt, and for the coup de grace, they're outrageous. Show business kids making movies of themselves, you know they don't give a fuck about anybody else. To the caustic observations on Don't Take Me Alive, a song about a guy who's had a mental breakdown, become a killer, and now is holed up in a house with a case of dynamite. Can you hear the evil crowd, the lies and the laughter? Or they could be downright funny. I stepped up on the platform. The man gave me the news. I said, you must be joking, son. Where did you get those shoes? And they could be caring and tender. Any major dude with half a heart surely will tell you, my friend. Any minor world that breaks apart falls together again. When the demon is at your door, in the morning it won't be there no more. Any major dude will tell you. Any major dude will tell you. Steely Dan made songs you could live inside. Little movies of the strange world of Becker and Fagin. No one ever sounded like Steely Dan or ever sounded so damn cool. In the interviews, the very rare interviews the duo gave, they came across as sardonic, sarcastic and a bit detached. Personally, looking back, I think Walter and Don adopted that persona. It was their way of dealing with the music business, the price of fame, the world of rock and roll. Back then in the 70s, to quote Winston Churchill, Steely Dan came across as a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. Also at that time, as well as giving up touring, Walter Becker seemed to be taking more of a backseat as a musician on the band's records. At the time of Pretzel Logic, he entrusted his role as a bass player to top session musicians like Chuck Rainey and Wilton Felder. He said, "Once I met Chuck, there was really no need for me to be bringing my bass to the studio anymore." Maybe Walter just felt that Steely Dan were moving forward on their endless quest for that mythical perfection, that he didn't have the chops, and there were others, more technically proficient musicians who could realise the sounds that he and Don were hearing in their heads. Even though from Pretzel Logic onwards he had credits as playing bass and guitar. Now I thought with all these fantastic guitarists coming in, Walter must just be playing on the demo or just some rhythm guitar or just on the song's basic outline. Now I don't know if this was different in the United States, but Steely Dan albums when they were released in the UK didn't list who played what and where on each track. In 1977, in an interview with journalist Cameron Crowe, he said that it wouldn't bother him at all not to play on his own album, which kind of reinforced my belief that Walter was losing or had lost interest in being a performing musician. Not long after the release of the album Gaucho in 1980, Walter Becker and Donald Fagin pulled the plug on Steely Dan, and Walter moved to the Hawaiian island of Maui, where he became an avocado farmer and a self-styled critic of the contemporary scene. And as the years rolled by, Walter did turn up from time to time. He worked as a producer on albums by Ricky Lee Jones and China Crisis and others, but for a long time Steely Dan and what actually happened in those recording studios remained a mystery. But as we moved into the 1990s, little snippets, little nuggets of information started to surface. Dean Parks. I remember sitting with Donald in a brief moment of quiet and not too much stress, and I asked him, what is it exactly that Walter does? I recall Don saying to me, he finishes the things that I can't seem to finish. It could be a line in a song, it could be a missing chord somewhere. I'm not sure that I quite understood all that he meant at the time, but now I think I get it. Lee Ritenour. Both of them had amazing arranging abilities. Donald would use the keyboard and Walter would use the guitar sounds to orchestrate those records. Walter Becker. I often get asked the who did what question about Steely Dan. Basically, songwriting is a matter of two guys sitting in a room, starting with nothing and ending up with something, and you don't really know who did what. Imagine two people that built a house being asked who laid what brick. And then I think it was about 1993 we got the details of what exactly went on in those famous Steely Dan recording sessions. And you know what? Mr. Walter Becker was revealed as a great guitarist. The sly old fox hiding there in plain sight, the equal to any of those session guitarists that poured through the doors of Steely Dan's recording studios. Elliot Shiner, who worked as an engineer on many of the band's albums. Walter was an unbelievable guitar player. All the notes that came out were so unusual, but plenty of times he wouldn't play, and I never understood why. Some of Mr. Becker's highlights. Pretzel Logic, the title track, is drenched with Walter's stinging blues licks. They're searing and powerful, and if you want a masterclass in how to play rock blues, this is it. The phrasing, the technique is just superb. Black Friday. Jeff Beccario on drums provides a fast, funky shuffle, and Walter chases him step for step. It's one of the few times you get to hear Walter blaze away. It's fuzzed guitar ecstasy. No countdown. East St. Louis Toodaloo. Now how many major rock bands were covering Duke Ellington's songs back in the 1970s? I'm just going to have a quick count here. Yep, only one. Here Walter is sublime. He plugs his guitar into a talk box. He captures perfectly the original's trombone solo. along with Don Fagin on sax, yes, Don on sax, Skunk Baxter on pedal steel and Jim Gordon on drums, and they pull it off beautifully. Bad Sneakers. When I first heard this, I thought it's got to be Larry Carlton. But no, over Don's rhythm and blues piano, Walter steps up and delivers a concise, jazzy solo. It's pure perfection. Where many of the guitarists back in the 70s preferred to kick the door down and blaze away playing a million notes a minute, Walter just stood back, observed what was needed for each song and produced exactly what was needed. On the surface, some of Walter's solos, especially in later years, at first listen might seem a little bit inconsequential, those seemingly weird clusters of notes, and he doesn't seem to go where most guitarists would go. But he creates these little earworms that stick in your head and make you want to revisit that song over and over again. He adds subtle little touches, subtle little effects that change the mood and texture. And as for leaving his bass at home, all those years ago in 1973, Dean Parks. When I later saw individual song player credits on Dan compilation records, I realised Walter had overdubbed bass on many of them. His bass playing was excellent. So thank you for listening, but this is only part one of my Walter Becker tribute. In the second part we'll be looking at Walter's fantastic solo albums 11 Tracks of Whack and Circus Money, to be most definitely continued. But I want to leave you with one of my favourite Walter Becker quotes. At one point in an interview, Walter was asked about the musical anarchists, the subversives. He replied, and I'd like to think he had a twinkle in his eye, "We thought superimposing jazz harmonies on pop songs was pretty subversive." Thank you for listening. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow. But most of all, and most importantly of all, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.